Good afternoon. Welcome. This is really a great day, but I have a question to ask you. So, if no one sees you, how can they follow you? That's the question. If no one sees you, how can they follow you? And let me ask you this as a secondary question. If you weren't you, would you even know you existed online? I know that's a tough, twisted question, but think about it. If you weren't you, would you even know you existed online? Hi, everybody. My name is Ron Gagosian. Welcome to this week's webinar, be up on YouTube. But let's get started. Today's webinar, get things in order here on my desk, is not about being seen or being an influencer or being a social media guru. But I take it that most of you are in a form of sales. But let me ask you this. Again, hold that question up in your mind. If you even knew you existed, you might want to shoot me because I don't know what the big two. Webinar. Visibility precedes sales. Good afternoon, good evening, everyone. I'm so glad that you are here, that you are with me and going to be here watching this. I have a question for you. If no one sees you, how can they follow you? Again, if no one sees you, how can they follow you? Let me ask you another question. If you weren't you, if you weren't you, would you even know you existed online? Good afternoon. My name is Ron Gagosian. I'm here to speak with you because it's a very important webinar. It's visibility precedes sales. Visibility precedes sales. So visibility is not vanity. Visibility is legacy. Today isn't about social media. It's about presence. This is for the leader in you who's tired of being or waiting to be discovered. So again, I've asked some pretty deep questions. I hope you understand the questions. If you weren't you, would you even know or recognize that you were online? So what does that mean? If it's online or your presence in terms of how you create visibility in your work, in your sales, in your business development efforts, in your overall social media. So movement and momentum are two different things. And momentum is not movement. So let's start with movement. Movement is about creating activity that moves you into a state of momentum. There are various aspects of that, and we'll talk about that. But I wanted to be able to say to you that movement and momentum are two integral parts that we're going to talk about today. Motion attracts attention. Inaction repels opportunities. So when you show up, even imperfectly, doors open. Don't mistake planning for progress. Don't mistake planning for progress. You can sit in your office, you can sit wherever you are with your laptop or your iPad or your mobile device or your telephone with a pad of paper And you can plan all you want, but it doesn't mean that there's progress. So what visibility actually means is not just posting. It's just not texting someone. It's filming a 30-second story. It's DMing that old contact. It's about holding a webinar when you don't want to hold it. It's about and making sure that your visibility gets out there. It's about doing a Facebook Live and then putting it out to Zoom or putting it out to YouTube or doing it live in YouTube. That's visibility. So it's not about even asking for referrals so you can do cold calling. So showing up for your future is really about what we're talking about, and it's an identity shift. You're not building a brand here, you're building trust. And so when you show up consistently, day in, day out, week after week, month after month, and you've allowed a lot of runway space for yourself, you begin to notice momentum. Momentum begins with movement, and you actually begin to utilize and you become more secure in the tools of your trade. So some of you might be in direct selling where you create a list of 100, and that potentially could show a potential of visibility, but it doesn't actually prove visibility. So you can have DMs on your social media. Visibility is created by the movement that you create in your posts, or the amount of posts. People begin to see your consistency. They begin to show up and watch you. They begin to comment. They DM, they reply, they send you a thumbs up, they send you a heart, or they engage with you and say, hey, that was a great post. It was really powerful, what have you. And you make a difference. So visibility is how people show up to you. And it's really about you building a table and having other people show up at that table. For instance, we're having a dinner party. Well, normally we send out an invite list, or we pick up the phone and we call a group of people and say, come on over, we're having a bite to eat and we'd love to have you. Well, in a way, you're really saying the same thing, but it's not a classic invite. You're actually moving people to respond based on how many times they've seen you, how many times you actually show up, and they are really appreciating your consistency, which is really your surroundings and or your good food, if we put it in that metaphor of inviting someone to your home or a group of people to your home to have dinner with you that don't normally come to your house. And maybe you've noticed that, where you invite people over and they go, oh, no, 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 that's perfectly fine. That's perfectly fine. Well, what are they really getting at there? They're really telling you, maybe I'm not so comfortable coming to your home. Maybe they're a little insecure because they can't reciprocate in a particular way. And they really have heard that you're a great chef or a cook. And it all begins at that particular level. So I want you to see that visibility really transcends a lot of the current modern day 2025 movement that we see in our social media, because it means more, it has more, and it has a lot more continuity when we're doing the things that we need to do. So I've talked about movement and I talked about momentum. And how does visibility really affect that? Well, your energy has a lot to do with it. If you can notice, I'm speaking up, I'm sitting up, I'm actually engaging with you. I wish that I could shake your hands and talk to you, and possibly someday we do that. By me saying to you that I really would like to be with you, or I'd like to engage with you, is really how you speak that in your social media posts, or by creating, for instance, a video and you send it to a really good friend, or you create a list of 100 hot, warm, or cold prospects. Could be anybody from your list of your database, and you believe your product or service really could help them in a magnificent way, and you actually want, and you think that, you know, Frank or Jane may actually be interested in what I have to offer. Just by picking up your cell phone, putting it on a stand or holding it in your hand and creating a little 30 or 40-second, 50-second video and saying, hey, Frank, I haven't talked to you in ages. We need to talk. But first, I just wanted to say I've been thinking about you and all the pleasant preliminaries, and moving into that and then clicking close and sending it. I have had the most incredible visibility responses by sending video texts. They are a fabulous way just to connect with people because they get to see your face, they get to engage, they get to hear not only your voice, but they get to see your sweet face, and they get to pretty much update themselves with, you know, your presence, but in a video. So it does possess and it does contain, and you will transmit really great positive energy when you do that. So let's again begin to talk about momentum. I'm not here to be your sales manager. I'm not here to be your social media influencer guru, but I am going to talk about what movement is, not on a to-do list. I've mentioned a few. It could be picking up the telephone and calling. You have a list of people, you have a number of people that you must call in order to achieve X sales at the end of the month. And that translates into momentum. So when people start calling you back and people are interested, or even if they're going to give you the objection that they're not interested, gives you the window. It literally opens the plantation shutters, and it gives you the opportunity to be visible. When you're sitting in front of somebody or you're speaking to someone on the telephone or in a Zoom room or what have you, you're creating, or a text or post on social media, you're creating movement. But the actual momentum is when people begin to respond to you. So don't get those two mixed up. I've stayed on that topic because you can actually verbally hear people being confused about that topic. Movement is much different than momentum, and momentum is a result of movement. Now, as we move a little bit further, we've had some technical difficulties today, so I'm just going to briefly look at my notes at the heading. So what does visibility actually mean? It's not just posting. It's texting someone. As I've said, it's filming a 30-second story. It's DMing the old contact. It's asking for referrals. You're not building a brand, you're actually building trust. So the tools of the trade, you have those at your disposal. You have the ability to make lists. You can create your content and set it up, and then move your content, whether it's videos, whether it's social media. You can actually set up the content calendar, because that in and of itself, creating the content calendar is creating the movement so that you open yourself up to having a consistent window of visibility. The next aspect that I want to talk about is identity frames. This is really an important aspect. And if you notice, I just clasped my hands. So what that really means is that I'm engaging emotionally with this. And that's really an important thing to notice. I noticed it, and I wanted you to be aware of that. When people's identity begins to get in the way of their work, it's noticeable. To give you an example, identity will be at the bedrock or the base of your why. But I truly believe in the years that I've spent working and the amount of time I've spent in sales and business development and running company and seeing people and interacting with them, say over the luncheon table or spending an afternoon with them discussing their objectives, you can begin to understand their identity. Truly, if you're in a sales call or you're in a meeting, if you think about it, if you question yourself without speaking out loud, ask yourself, where is the framework or the foundation of the person that's possibly speaking? What is their identity tied to in this particular action or bullet point or whatever they might be talking about? So in terms of people who need to make calls, people who actually need visibility, people that are in sales and business development functions, top people, people that are in direct selling situations, and you're leading teams, and you need to show other people how this identity works. It goes like this. When you don't want to perform, or you create excuses that essentially move the goalposts, move your goalposts, that you set a goal and you don't hit it because you say to yourself, I'm not going to do that today. I don't feel like it. I have a headache. Let me break rank here and give you a little dose of reality. We are having some technical issues today. And one thought was, I might postpone this. It's a very warm day here, and my office became very overheated. If you hear a fan in the background, I have that running. Almost lost power, power flickered, and I almost had to postpone. So I was beginning to get many things beginning to stack against me in building my webinar for today in our session. But I said, you know what? Today's a tough day. But today doesn't give me the excuse to move the goalposts on my visibility. I wanted to. Believe me, the flesh was very, very much wanting to postpone. And I said, no. And the way I went to that is I went to my identity and I said, are you going to die if you do this? Now, I know that's a bit of a morbid way to think about it, but at the end of everything I do here today, is that really going to happen? I don't think so. So with that extreme example, what we have is you have to find your why. I literally had to sit down and have a check with myself with a cold drink here sitting next to me and say, what is your why? What is your why? Tell me. I want to hear it. Say it audibly. And I gave my why. And I said, then you need to do this video. You need to do this Zoom. You need to get this out on YouTube because there are people that are expecting me to deliver in a consistent manner. And even though I'm having a bad day, or there are not really a bad day, but there are some things that were beginning to stack, and I've been able to clear those up, it doesn't give you nor me, and I'm looking at you straight in the eyes, it doesn't give you or me I would say it doesn't give you the right, because it goes against your why in life and why you're doing and the purpose to move the goalposts. When you move the goalposts, you're essentially cheating yourself. You're postponing, you're delaying. There's a lot of aspects psychologically that go on with it. It could be avoidance. It could really be avoidance. that you're just saying, I need to avoid this. And it's a habit. It's a habit that builds, that says, I'm going to avoid this because it's not so much the easier thing to do. It's what psychologists talk about when they talk about your amygdala in your brain. The amygdala is based on, as its function, for fight or flight. And anything that's painful, that immediately registers in that part of our brain, research has shown. And I was recently speaking with a very famous, well-authored clinical psychologist, Southern California. And the amygdala is a very, very sensitive part of our entire human existence. When we feel fear, when we feel angst, when we have anxiety, our natural impulse, the natural tendency is to not do it. Why? Because it's painful. So we condition from that point then in our brains our neural pathways. Those neural pathways, which are the fibric opter, fibric op, excuse me, the fiber optics that are in our brain that actually transmit what the feelings and what's going on in the amygdala. And it goes to those brain centers, those actual exchange points where the energy in our brain, the electrical energy, is being moved true and for, in so many different multiple ways that we groove those ideas and those thoughts and those tendencies because of pain, fear, and flight. So let me give you a quick example how this works. Let's say I was your mentor. I was privileged to have that opportunity. And I said, so what's your scorecard this weekend? What are you going to do between we meeting today and we're going to meet next week? What are you going to do in terms of your movement? You have so many sales calls, you have so many social media posts, so many webinars you can do. You only have so much time in the day. You have to eat properly. You need to sleep. You need to drink plenty of fluid. You need to have a good time. You need a little relaxation. That's a lot of time when you add up all the 24 hours in a day times 7, and then you squeeze in all of your work combined and all your personal and household, everything. It doesn't leave a lot of room. So the natural tendency is to avoid. So getting back to the clinical aspect of it, when we decide over a time and many, many patterns of how we are going to move the goalposts, we personally have a tendency, me included, to move those goalposts because we've grooved the neural pathways to probably, most certainly, overcommit so we make ourselves feel better. Now, I'm getting into a bit of psychology here, but it is the truth, and research has shown this, where we overcommit because we need to take care of the fear. And then when we don't achieve that goal, or in this particular case, I could have not held this webinar today and posted it out to YouTube, but I decided to rewire those neural pathways and say that I'm going to do it because the more that I practice what is not painful, I rewire the amygdala to not fire and create those sensory feelings, or that the angst and what am I going to do feelings, to I can handle this, I can do this, I can be a big boy, I can get on camera, I've got all my technology in front of me. So I'm actually saying the more you exercise your muscle, I'm making a muscle here, you actually begin to regroove the neural pathways in your brain to produce and to create what? A new identity. A new identity that becomes stronger. It becomes more in tune with the identity of the woman that you want to be and that you want to achieve and be, the man that you want to be. It actually then produces, because I'm actually beginning to feel right now, I can actually feel the uh, the hormonal effect of working through the logistics of what I was working with today. And then prior to this webinar, which is a really great example. So thank you for allowing me to give you some inside baseball here. But I'm actually feeling, so you can relate to this, that I'm actually feeling an uplift in that hormonal aspect of the dopamine and the good feelings because I accomplished it. I didn't move the goalpost to take care and to ease the fear and groove the portion of my brain that has been conditioned to actually begin to think about it. Because what will happen over time when something does get in your way or prevents you or creates some fear and anxiety with calling people, posting social media, doing a webinar, getting out, getting in front of people, speaking in front of a public audience, those can be very fearful things. What will happen is that you will actually begin, and maybe right off the bat, if you've practiced it enough, you'll just say to yourself, this would be more painful not to do this particular function or engage with people or be a public speaker or be on social media. It would be more painful to not perform and to do this for your why, for their benefit, for the people that you're engaging with and want visibility with, than to just cancel it or to move the goalposts. That's the place that you want to get to. When you can actually shift your identity, then all that means is that the more movement you have, the more momentum you have, your visibility with others begins to open up. Now, I will add that positive energy has a lot to do with it too. I'm not so much, we are electrical beings. Our brain, our hearts, we run on electricity. We have to run on electricity or we don't run. So the energy that we actually retransmit once we've created a stronger identity about our why and what the things that we're doing in life, that energy is actually transmitted. People feel that energy, like you're standing in the sun and you feel the energy of the sun. Well, the sun is producing a nuclear heat that is transmitted through our great space between Earth and sun, and you actually feel that. If you stay in that sunlight for too long, you're going to get sunburned. So that's really not the point here, but the point is I wanted you just to understand that's energy. So our bodies also emit energy. I don't know if you've taken your temperature lately, but you generally run somewhere around 98.6 on an average base. That's what the normal human beings. Some people run a little bit more. Some people run just a few points less. But for all in all, you run at 98.6. That energy is infrared light. So then again, we are electrical beings. So our heat is infrared light, which is energy. And it is equivalent to the sun. So a lot of you know that I wear an X39 patch, and you can see the patch emulated here in my background. We're not here to talk about X39 because we're at a little bit of a deeper junction here, talking about identity and how that moves into visibility and the proper forms of visibility. But that's energy. That's energy. So if we're able to harness our own light and our own energy and reflect it back into our bodies, there's a lot of great healing that can go on. At another webinar, we will talk about the actual interworkings of the X39 product. And I hope that you tune in at that time. So since I'm having some technical difficulties, I'm going to just briefly look down so that I can find where I am. I know where I am. So I want to, as we close here, as we've talked about movement, I've asked those questions about if you weren't you, would you even recognize your level of visibility? I added a word in there from that original question when we began. And I really want you to think about that because it's really, really important. The more you create positive energy, you create visibility, which is the actual movement that you will do, you'll create momentum. People, as I said, will come to your table and ask to sit down, meaning they will DM you, they will email you, they will text you, they will say, Frank, Jane, I met you at this function. I'd really like to get together for a cup of coffee. That's visibility. You put yourself out there, you made yourself vulnerable, and that worked for you. So in our overall level of visibility, you really don't need more strategy and you don't need more planning. Yes, there's a certain amount of planning that goes on, but again, plan smaller, build on that, create your movement. You create your movement, no one else will. You'll then be reciprocated because people will respond to you. They will come and begin to sit at your table, which is momentum. You'll be seeing things that you hadn't seen before because of movement. Your visibility plantation shutters will open up. They'll begin to give you more of a view based on your identity frame. That identity frame will move you to work through when your fears and anxieties begin to not so much lessen, but around things that are tied to your identity, that are tied to your work, that you must work through or you must move through in order to achieve your goals. You have to be aware of what obstructs you, what hurdles they might be, and then you address that by addressing your identity that begins to break down and begins to show you the benefits of the rejection that you perceive. So let me give you a quick example of what I mean there, and then we'll close. Let's, for instance, that you have a fear of making outbound cold calls or cold type of calls. It may just even be you have a real hard time in a sales position calling your warm or your hot prospects, just because there's a fear that something may fall on the floor and break that you can't control. Okay, so there's some elements in there. Excuse me. So when you break down the fear, we break down that fear that is in that rejection, and you turn it around and you say, then I'm back to this closing with identity here because it's extremely important. You actually begin by understanding the benefits of addressing what that rejection really and how it benefits you. Could be something like this. I'm making this sales call. I'm going to make this cold call. I'm going to make this call, do this post, do this webinar, move through what my plans are and how I conduct and run my business for greater optimization. And you say to yourself, well, the benefit of someone rejecting me is that I'm going to move on, but my fear of it is a different aspect. And that's what I'm speaking about. The fear that you have about being rejected is going to do what for you? Really nothing. And the benefit is that you will be more mindful when you become, or you get that feeling, or that level of, or when that rejection appears again. And believe me, as you're here on planet Earth, people are going to reject you. They're going to reject what you say. They're going to reject how you may present. They may just completely shut you down. But the fear is what I'm talking about. When you address the fear and disconnect it from your identity, as you're creating your and more visibility, you'll see it as a benefit, because down the road, you may have more money in the bank. And if you say the what ifs, what if I get to be X particular age and I didn't make these calls to secure this kind of level of income? Then I wouldn't have health care. I wouldn't have groceries. I wouldn't have a nice place to live. I might have to live with somebody else. I might have, I mean, there's a lot of different scenarios, trust me. But once you dig down and you're actually at the place where you see what you're doing and reframe it as a benefit to you, that then moves the needle with your identity, and it secures it. And physiologically, what it does, and emotionally and psychologically, it creates no longer a fear, but it's a benefit, because you see it as positive in your own life. That I need to make this webinar. I need to do this webinar, in my case today, because there, the pain of not performing, and not say performing, but the actual aspect of being with you today would be greater for me in the long run than it is for the benefit. And so that has an opportunity, and once that has an opportunity to settle in you, so think about the actual benefits to your fears and being able to turn that around and deliver it back to yourself. I'm not talking about positive thinking here. I'm actually asking you to do the work. Do the work and be able to understand that delivering to yourself the benefits of why you don't want to perform a certain action or do a certain task. Once that is achieved, you will regroove the neural pathways, which will give you the opportunity to even create more. You will optimize more. You will not feel so burdened about how am I going to get all of this done. So at the end of all of this and what I've spoken to you today, there is a lot of identity work that must go on in order for you to achieve your visibility and optimize your work. Again, I'm Ron Gagosian. I'm so happy to have been with you today. I appreciate your time. We went a little bit longer because I really wanted to delve into at about the 30-minute mark, about that. I wanted to be able to explain to you that it's not about being a social influencer. It's not about to be a telephone influencer. Those are all tasks. They're all part of the daily things that we need to do. But for the work that you're trying to do, whether you're in sales, direct sales, business development, you're a leader, you need to be in front of people and you have certain fears. It is your ultimate movement, momentum, and visibility that is handled by your positive identity. And with that being said, I look forward to seeing you all another time at another webinar. You can reach us directly at gagosiangroup.com. That's GAGOSIAN.com, group.com, pardon me. You can reach us on Facebook Business at thegagosiangroup.com. You can reach us on Instagram at globallyaligned.Ron Gagosian, or on LinkedIn. You can find me there with the same first and last name. So with that, I wish you well. We will see you soon, I pray, and be able to chat with each one of you along the way here as we walk this path and journey together. Good day.